Player character deaths can be unpredictable, regardless of the DM's intentions. So how do we handle that when it happens? Hey, my name is Jay or Paynii, and today I want to talk about player character deaths in Dungeons & Dragons, how to handle them as a player or DM, the most common causes for deaths in D&D, and whether or not revival mechanics are good or bad. But first we need to cover the most important part of character death. Why do PC deaths even matter in Dungeons & Dragons? First of all, the most important and simplest reason I allow the death of player characters in my campaigns is because it adds tension to their stories. They understand that their actions and choices have consequences that directly impact their beloved character's survivability. As a little added bonus, it dissuades players from becoming annoying murder hobos.
I will kill them.
So yay for that. But the threat of death is not the only reason that death is important. Some people grow so attached to theirs or their party members' characters that the loss of them can feel truly gut-wrenching or even cathartic to some people. While at first obviously heartbreaking, it turns into a great memory to share in the future. That is not all, as these deaths indicate to the players that the world their characters reside in does not cater to them specifically. Most scenarios that we play introduce a hostile world that is unapologetic to its inhabitants. Deaths in these worlds bring our characters back to the reality that while in their story they are the heroes, they are not the center of the world. As a side note, however, there are campaigns that do very well without the specific mechanic of death. I have seen a campaign that took entirely place within the dreamscape of one of the player's characters after a traumatic experience. The premise was the characters coming to terms with their shortcomings within this dream, and due to the setting, the idea of death was non-existent. These kind of scenarios require you to come up with different points of tension, or you simply don't tell the characters that death is off the table until after the session or campaign. Now that we have figured out why we include PC deaths in our campaigns, we should look at the most common reasons or scenarios for characters to die, as there can be some that are better than others, and you will see that in a second. A long-fought combat with a foe who is simply too powerful to overcome. The party manages to barely secure a win at the cost of one of their companions. Death is sad, but knowing you fought your hardest and played part in your party succeeding and living to fight another day makes it feel a little better. However, you have to ask yourself this. Was this death perhaps only caused due to poor balancing? Did the player actually take part in the battle? Or was the initial BBEG attack so powerful it simply took the player out in one shot, leaving them to watch and ultimately lose their character? When it comes to PC death in a combat scenario, there is a thin line between satisfying and frustrating ends to a character's life. Another death that is mostly satisfying to a player is the one they mostly chose by themselves. A moment of heroism overtakes them, throwing themselves into an oncoming assault, taking that hit and saving their ally at the cost of their own character. I think from the example you can tell that the most satisfying deaths are the ones that drive the narrative. Those that give great opportunities for the players to roleplay their emotions, feelings, and convictions. While the unsatisfying deaths, on the other hand, are those where the player has little to no agency. Examples for that are plentiful. A trap that was undetectable and instead of being a setback trap, had overtuned damage and took out the player in one shot. Or roll after roll after roll after roll failing, not catching a break the whole night. It feels like those kind of deaths are outside the player's hands and it can break their motivation to even roll up another character or keep playing. Sure, we all agree that dice are part of the storytelling, but at the end of the day, we're all here to have fun. The dice disagreeing with that every turn of the way is just annoying sometimes. So before we move on to how players and DMs should handle a death, I want to give the quick advice to all the DMs out there that it is perfectly fine to retcon storytelling decisions. Unsatisfying turns of events that leave every player at the table with a bitter taste in their mouth suck, and it is fully within the DM's power to overturn, fudge, or even forego the results of the dice for the purpose of better storytelling. And since we're already somewhat on the topic, let's talk about how a DM should handle the death of a player character. As I mentioned in my previous point, death shouldn't be arbitrary, but you should also be honest with it. It is okay to fudge dice for the purpose of creating a better story. but it is equally okay not to fudge them for the same reason. Sometimes a character death is good storytelling. Since character death can be a very devastating moment in any campaign, I think it is very important to cover such cases in a Session 0. If you aren't sure what a Session 0 is, I will cover this in another video, but essentially it is setting ground rules and expectations for the players at the table before playing your first session. Anyways, the DM should give the scene a lot of respect. For a moment, tune out the rest of what is happening and instead focus on the gravity of what is happening to the character right now. Slow down the play. Give the player a vivid description of them seeing their character's life flash before them. This is your opportunity as the DM to really pull at their heartstrings through your narration. Then right as you finish that heartfelt description, time continues to work normal. All the other players at the table now get to have their reaction to what is happening. Then step back right here and let the players run the next moments for you. I also highly suggest allowing the player to have a last heroic action, or after the combat ends, have their character muster up the power to give a few last words or a speech to their grieving companions. Now that we have covered what the DM is meant to do, how do you, as the player, deal with character? First of all, you are absolutely allowed to feel devastated or sad. It is very easy to get attached to characters that you've spent hours brainstorming for and even more hours role-playing. But that is also exactly why you should embrace it. It is just another chapter in that character's life. It is the end to an arc, and you will have epic tales to speak of about this character. Let the party celebrate and say goodbye to your character through certain rituals. A cleric, for example, holding a ceremony, or a druid returning them to the earth. But of course, maybe death isn't always the end anyways. Maybe during your Session 0 with your DM, they put revival on the table, allowing your party to go on an adventurous side quest to bring their fallen companion back to the living. Should the death of a character not be the end of a session, then, and I know this is hard, try not to tune out of what is happening at the table. Maybe you could suggest to your DM that for the rest of the session you continue playing your character as a kind of ghostly specter that can communicate with the party in cryptic messages or in certain other fun ways, so you can still engage with the session without having your character still. Or maybe even better, you were warned about a dangerous situation and potential character death, and you already have your backup character ready, and your DM has a way to introduce the new character to the party in the same session. I said it is okay to be devastated and sad, and I want to add that it is also perfectly fine to be angry. It is just important to note that you should not vent that anger onto your party or your DM. If you feel your character's death was unfair or unwarranted, speak calmly to your DM maybe after the session and see if maybe they did make a mistake and there might be room for you two to come to an agreement to retcon the scene, bringing back your character and pretending nothing ever happened. Well, our player character died. What do we do now? I personally prefer to halt the session right there and then, as I don't want any of my players to have to sit out and just watch. And there's several ways I fix this actually. For one, I sometimes have an NPC companion with the party the player can take over control of and continue playing as a companion to the party rather than a player character, so they at least have something to do and we can continue the story. Sometimes I already anticipate that a potential encounter in the future is going to get them to their last hit point. In such cases, I ask my players to prepare a concept or an already finished character sheet just in case. And if that is not an option, I fully put the session on hold. We sit down together and we make a character together on the spot and find a good place to reintroduce them into the story, integrated into the party. Another thing that I like to do for a character that has died is to prepare a little tribute for them. Usually it's a funeral-like speech before the start of the next session about their character's life and accomplishments, celebrating the successes and hardships that their character has to boast about in the afterlife. I think we've talked plenty about death now. Why it is needed, when it is most likely to happen, how to deal with it, and what to do after. So let's talk about resurrection. If it is included in your world, it is one of the most important things to do after a character death. Obviously, the most positive thing about spells like Revivify is that you don't lose your beloved character. We have spoken so much about the gut-wrenching feeling of losing a character you've built a connection to, so being able to avoid that feeling by having the reassurance that you can bring them back to life certainly helps. But at the same time, it takes away from the seriousness of death. It undermines what it means to throw yourself at a dangerous encounter or risking your life, making it feel like a get-out-of-jail-free card. Though, in all honesty, that is kind of the only negative I can think of right now. While you have other cool aspects to resurrection, like making your party go on an epic adventure to bring back your friend from the realm of death so that they can continue their unfinished business among the living. In my opinion, resurrection is a great feature to add to your story as a scarce, heroic achievement. It maintains the threat of death, allows a fun bonus quest line, and the chance to continue with a beloved character. Now, what do I think of character deaths and revivals? Death is part of the story. In a lot of cases, it can be a satisfying end to a character's story. And in other cases, it can be a transition to greater things, like an even more fun character. It allows memories of the character's life with their death, the last tragic memory you keep about them, to live on past the end of the campaign. Most of my campaigns are gritty, dark fantasy settings that are ruthless towards my players. Death always looming, allowing them to feel all emotions. The high after beating a tough battle to the lows of losing a friend. Allowing them to grow as their characters and as players. And I hope with this video I was able to help you better figure out how to handle and deal with character deaths at your D&D tables at home. Right, those were my thoughts about character deaths and what to do as a player, DM, what to do afterwards and all that stuff. And most important thing I can leave you with here is always have a session 0 about this stuff. Please down below let me know your thoughts and your most memorable character deaths in your campaigns. Thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe so you don't miss next week's video. And if you're a new DM or a new player, my other videos might be of interest to you as well. And I'll see you all next week. Bye guys. Yeah.